takes money to make money. And my name is Bill Comstock. I'm with Farm Credit Virginia's. I'm the business line leader for our commercial ag, which is our production agriculture, traditional meat, milk, and eggs, grains, so forth, as well as our agribusiness, supporting our farm-related businesses, both on the supply side as well as the processing side, moving down the food chain. Typically at this time, I tell a story or have a joke to make sure you understand that I don't bite, but in essence of time, because really what we're trying to do in this session today is use it as, or this morning, is to use it as a primer for our breakout sessions this afternoon when we get into those groups. So, we may have some time for questions afterwards, but really we're setting this session up for the breakout sessions we have this afternoon. So what I want to just talk about briefly, and again, this will be a high-level overview and that we can drill down into later this afternoon, but just give you an idea of a snapshot of the Farm Credit system, who we are, what we do, the opportunities and challenges as we see it right now in agriculture, and then the key success factors and challenges with startup operations and transition planning on the family farm. And then I'd like to wrap up with what to look for in a lender. So to get started, the Farm Credit overview, just to tell our story a little bit. It was initially started, we're almost 100 years old now. Started with seed money created by an act of Congress back in 1916 to provide sound financial and credit to the agriculture in rural America. We are not a government agency, so we're not to be confused with FSA, which we work hand in hand with FSA on some of their programs. But there's often a confusion there that we're a government agency, and we're not. We are government regulated, though, because our initial charter was created by Congress. And the point is our system is financially strong as ever, and I'll delve into that a little bit here. The key thing with Farm Credit, or we're a network of financial cooperatives. So as Michael was talking about some of those cooperative movements going on, we were one of the original cooperatives, started back when cooperatives were allowed to that came into existence back in that time frame. We are, as a system, we are the leading agricultural lender in the United States. We have 82 associations in the 50 states and Puerto Rico. And then we have 3 associations that are here that service Virginia. Farm Credit of Virginia, which I'm fortunate to represent. We have a majority of Virginia and West Virginia. And then we have a sister association, Colonial Farm Credit, that services that eastern portion of the state, and then Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit is a sister cooperative that services the 5 counties in the very northern on that I-81 corridor. That cooperative organization, what makes us different is that we are that local flavor. We're borrower owned. We're actually owned by our members. We have borrower control boards, so that's an interesting relationship when your customer is also your boss. Okay, and then the real benefit is that our patronage is that we give back our profits, and we've been consistently returning at Farm Credit Virginia is 12% of interest paid in every year. So rates are roughly in that 5 to 6%. We're giving back to half to 60 basis points back in the form of a patronage refund. Get that check back. Specialized lending services, agriculture in America, rural America focus. And we believe that we are part of the food chain, which I think is very important, that when I visit with our young lenders, that we say that our industry is agriculture and our business is finance, which is a lot different than other lenders out there that their business is financial services and they delve into agriculture sometimes as the wind blows, getting in and out. So we feel that we are that stable resource to the ag community in rural America. And then we also have very competitive rural housing options as well. So we are really delivering that, making sure that there's always access to capital in rural marketplaces. One of the things that's different with us than the bank is that we do not have authority to accept deposits. So we're not a depository, so we don't have checking and savings. It's really just we are a lender that provides capital to the marketplace. This is somewhat of a busy slide, but I did want to point out all the segments that Farm Credit services. And really, when we talk about farm to table, as you go through here, it's heavy agriculture, but then it's the, all those pieces of the pie that get food from the producer to the table. So, what's nice about our portfolio is within agriculture, although we are industry, specialized, we have great diversity across all those segments. Then just want to show you how we have grown as a system, the past 6 years. And what I really want to point out here is just that stability that we've been able to maintain. If you saw this graph on a lot of financial institutions about 2008, those numbers, the bars changed quite a bit. And we just were not impacted as much from, the financial downturn. I think that shows our stability and our commitment to agriculture. Where we've seen some dips have been, it does tie back to the general economy. Like we have a fairly, sizable timber portfolio. That got pared back a little bit just because that lumber peeled back, but that business is now coming back. So we see our loan volume staying consistent and moving forward. Again, lending support for rural America. Other than making loans, we also offer, basically the real estate, the operating piece financing, leasing, equipment financing. We do some appraisal work, crop insurance, and then as like to tie in on this section, that business and succession planning support. And then we are just a believer in that young beginning and small producer programs. We're a big supporter of the Young Farmer Institute with Dr. Cole. I suspect everybody, or most people know who Dr. Cole is. And then we have an Ag Biz Planner, which is a program that actually helps people put together a business plan and some training pieces to that. And then special lending programs will reduce requirements and rates for young beginning farmers. And then one thing we're really proud about is we have a youth loan program, which we go to the 4-H and FFA, down to kids from 10, 11, 12 up to 17. That we've actually financed their project for them. As far as they can go out and buy a steer and actually raise that animal, it's an educational piece which we believe is important, getting them used to putting together a business plan and then following that through to repayment. And when I believe Elizabeth pointed out, those are the types of loans that probably actually cost us money because of the transaction cost to do those, but it's important to us that we do that because we're investing in the future. Opportunities and challenges. And when we move, as we heard this morning, Virginia agriculture is very diverse, which, that in and of itself, in my mind, says opportunity, okay? We have great traditional agricultural segments as well as these emerging trends. And then we're also near a large population base, so it's outlet for production. So as some of these emerging trends come up, if I were a young person right now, I would be hearing opportunity, okay? There's opportunity out there. And this consumer trend towards wanting to know where their food comes from. Again, it's just that opportunity. The other piece is, the average age of farmer, 55 plus, and that number you'll see I put 55 plus because you'll see it from 54 to 58, but it's there, okay? It's somewhere in there. That's an opportunity for youth, and what's interesting is you're out and about in the marketplace, there are some farms that do not have that next generation to take over. So there's going to be some opportunities for some farms turning over that for some young producers will be an opportunity. The challenges and this high capital requirements to get into agriculture. I mean, it is very high, coupled with the high market volatility. It's very difficult for young beginning producers to enter and withstand any type of early adversity. And particularly these last 5 years with higher input costs, and ultimately we're getting traditional margins once the higher input costs ultimately equals higher risk. So it was always tough to get young beginning farmers in. These last few years have been even tougher just because the capital requirements even got ratcheted up to get down the road to really get them kick-started to move forward. The other challenge is there are current farms with multiple members of the next generation. So there are family farms out there that have 2 or 3 siblings that also want to come into agriculture. And how do we get them started up when a lot of times that initial support comes from mom and dad? So that's one of the challenges that we're facing. And it was great to hear Michael and Elizabeth, because that equity capital piece, or that piece of the pie that doesn't just particularly come from traditional financing, that has never been discussed, and it just seems like it's a growing piece that's an opportunity as we move forward. The other challenge is the environmental issue, which and again, it's just being good stewards of the environment and making sure that there's capital in place for those best management practices as we move forward. Key success factors and challenges in the startup operations and transition planning. We have to start with education. I think I commend all of you today for coming to a session like this, because it starts there, is getting better at understanding these opportunities and challenges, and how we navigate will get us over the top as we move forward as an industry. So within that education, is that segment-specific production and operations training. Depending on what portion of agriculture is your passion, there's opportunities for education out there, learning as much about that. When it starts coming into the financial piece then, and again, we've heard some of these things this morning with Elizabeth, that record keeping, budgeting, and planning. Being able to, pull together a business plan and be able to explain that business plan is very important as we move forward. And then just the understanding of financials and financial statements, balance sheet and operating statements, the Sweet 16 financial ratios. And again, I can't go into those today. But the 4 that I want to hit on as we move forward is this equity piece, cash flow, working capital, and have an appropriate debt structure when we do move forward to getting people started in business. And then again, the marketing and risk management is also key pieces as we move forward. Business planning, just that high level, that understanding the income and expense drivers within the plan, and understanding what drives those is important. What I say is know how to drive a pencil, okay? And sometimes we get, we'll see plans, that are 4 inches thick, computer generated, but the operator or the person who wants to go into business can't really explain the plan. Some of the better plans that I have seen in my career have been done with a yellow tablet and a number 2 pencil, okay? Need to understand your plan. The ability to communicate and follow that plan is also critical as we move forward. And then the other point I'd like to make is, solicit help from, industry resources. Your lender, attorney, and accountant, but the key point is do not expect them to drive your plan and or prepare your plan. It really needs to come from you, and that input that you receive from them helps in guidance, but not actually producing it. Because I'm pointing out some pieces that we see as lenders. Someone will come in with an idea and it's not a plan, and that's a surefire way of getting a no as you move forward. Equity, and this is the one I want to talk about and was excited to hear with Michael and Elizabeth's sessions, is that equity for a small beginning farmer, whether it's small or not, but just a beginning farmer, that is the biggest challenge as a lender, and for this transition planning as we see the future unfold. It's that part that the business owner actually owns. Traditional lending, we'd like to see that owner equity be greater than 40%. That's the piece of the business that you're communicating to the lender, saying, hey, I have enough skin in the game that I'm not going to wake up one day and say I'm going to go somewhere else and leave you with the bag. We do reduce our standards for beginning producers to greater than 25% equity requirements, but the concern there is there's just so minimum room for adversity. And one of the things that, as a lender, what we want to be careful of is I never want to be in a position where I lend the last dime on this action. I always want to be able to throw somebody a lifeline if they needed it due to this adversity the volatility that we have in agriculture. So that's, in and of itself, you kind of put yourself against the wall right up front with low equity requirements. But that's where we're comfortable stretching to. How that equity is structured is also important as it impacts working capital and the ability to handle adversity. And I'll mention that a little bit later here. But and then the other key is that equity is different than collateral. And I mentioned that with a lot of our transition farms where mom and dad may want to put up the farm as collateral, but it's really not a source of equity you can tap into for that working capital piece and be able to handle adversity, because you don't have that unless you actually have to sell that piece. The key point I might want to make here, and again, is that lenders are not venture capitalists. We will have people come in with great business plans, great ideas, something that'll work, but they'll be looking for 100% financing, and that's that equity piece is the only thing that's missing from it, and it's frustrating on both parts, because a lot of times they'll say, well, bank turned me down or my lender turned me down. That's not necessarily the case. We have a very viable business plan. There's this equity piece that we need to somehow find how to fund, and I'll show you some examples of overcoming this equity hurdle that because we've had some success with that. Where we've seen success is again, we see FSA as an opportunity for that real true startup to get up and running. They have much lower requirements on that equity piece. And then ultimately we get in a position where they can graduate to a traditional lender, whether it be Farm Credit or another lender. It's subordinate debt. Sometimes they'll put subordinate debt in, meaning that if things go bad, that would be the last money that comes out of the operation, and or provide loan guarantees. And then these private sources, and I called it venture capital, and Elizabeth, after going through her examples, I'd probably reclassify that now, but I just kind of, just any private money, okay, so I'm calling venture capital. And what's important about this is that it must look like equity to the lender. It's that first money in, last money out. And we've had tremendous amount of success or tremendous examples, particularly here in Rockingham County, that there's quite a bit of private funding out there that we work with closely with them. Some of those funds we like in a deal to get us over the top. But then there's, in my mind, an opportunity because there's some operations that have that private money in that we could probably provide that other piece to it. So that's a chunk of money that theoretically could go to another venture somewhere else. So that's one, as we talk as a group of leaders, that's one of the things we need to keep in mind as an opportunity for the future. Typically that comes from family members. We're seeing it stretch out a little bit more than that. And then what's exciting about those sessions this morning is that equity piece that Michael and Elizabeth talked about. That hasn't been talked about. I mean, the last few years, it's starting to be on the radar, and I see it as a huge opportunity because when Michael, was saying, hey, we need this, you need 100% venture capital. What we're saying Farm Credit is, hey, you may only need 25% of that, or 40% if you really get to the level where we'd like you to be. So there's an opportunity as we move forward, if this flushes out, that there's a tremendous opportunity here to really provide that local financing. I guess to point out on those private sources, Elizabeth kind of pointed this out, what we see sometimes is that you need to give up some control, or you may need to in your business, and whether you want to do that or not, that'd be up to you. But there needs to be some assurance there that you're just not going to take a venture capital person's money, whether it be private, and just take off with it. So typically there's some hooks in there. And then tying this back to the business plan and how important it is that you must demonstrate the knowledge of that business plan, probably more so to that private funding person than you do to a lender. Just so they understand what you're doing and you show confidence that you're going to be pretty successful in executing your plan. Cash flow is another key piece, and a key piece that people need to understand is that profits cure many ills, but cash flow pays the bills. And not to say the profits aren't good, because ultimately they are related. It's just if you have to invest in inventory and so forth, it may take you time to actually get that cash back into your business. So it's important that we understand cash flow, those cash flow inflows and cash outflows, and ensuring those funds are available for deficit periods. And for a startup business, or really any business, it's to the point with the volatility in agriculture that it probably should be monthly. On a startup, you could even argue sometimes weekly. If you may be scratching just to see where the money's coming from to pay a bill this week. So it's important to understand that and be forecasting that. And what I was more than what the car was worth, that typically happens when you stretch it out too long, okay? Again, appropriate debt structure, I throw this out, trade payables, and we've heard this, whether we call it credit cards or supplier finance from trade accounts. Beware of depending and or riding to finance business needs. Suppliers are not lenders or venture capitalists. That's not their business. We need them to provide goods and services to our industry. And it's also a sign of issues within your business model. So what I'm saying here is not that, supplier financing is bad. It needs to be, it's okay if, they are actually offering extended terms and that you're not force placing that by just not paying them. if extended terms are, you know, if they're at competitive rates, you know, it's a good source. But if not, then you should be utilizing your lender, or it should be assigned maybe more equity capital in your business. Other points, collateral is a secondary source of repayment. That's the plan if your plan doesn't work. And as a lender, if we never have to sell another piece of collateral in my career, I'd be happy with that. Okay, it's not a path you want to go down, but it's important to understand it, because we'll hear from time to time, you know, when the cash flow is tight, we'll say, well, you have all this collateral. Well, sometimes it may be a situation where you need to go sell some of that hard asset to get some cash into the business. So you really set the business up for success, get it structured right from a debt standpoint. The other pieces is there is a difference between real estate and chattel collateral, which some lenders don't even understand what chattel collateral is. Chattel is, you know, tends to be equipment, cows, livestock, or potentially actually input finance for growing crops. Farm transition plans, and again, this is as this aging thing. One of the things to point out is that if you're over 40, you need to be working on your transition plan now. If you have a family-owned farm, you're over 40, and that's the person who owns it, okay, not the next generation. And the reason I say that is for a real transition plan, it may take you 10 to 15 years to execute that, particularly to get around some tax hurdles, and not waiting until, you know, got one in the cradle and one in the grave moving forward. So that's just a high-level advice there. There are ways to maintain control and with sound succession planning, because that's the biggest hurdle that a lot of that first generation struggle with, is I don't want to give control up of my operation to junior, because there's been horror stories where, you know, junior kicks them out then, but that's pretty rare. There are ways around that. But what I suggest is you get your attorney, accountant, or lender and other industry allies involved in helping you maneuver through that. What to look for in a lender, and kind of in my mind it's pretty key. A lender is a very key part of the financial piece. A lender that is part of the industry, okay? They talk the talk and they walk the walk. They understand your business. They understand your individual operation and your goals, your family goals, and then they understand agricultural markets and that volatility. I've told my wife that, you know, someday when I retire, I will be well qualified to ride the roller coaster or to run the roller coaster at Disney World, because of the peaks and valleys that we experience, and be able to help people through those peaks and valleys. I think it's important that you have a lender that can tell you no, but explain why, and more importantly, maybe help you steer to get to where you want to be. It's very important. And then ultimately, you know, be a trusted resource. I guess just real quick, as I wrap this up, because it is important that we have lenders that are dedicated to agriculture. Are there any other lenders other than Farm Credit or that are traditional lenders that are in the building now that we could recognize? I'm sorry about that, but
I guess I'm not traditional.
But no, yeah, I wasn't pointing. Yeah, that was I was just looking for local lenders. But I guess the point is that Farm Credit, you know, we're here for you. We have a booth in the back. Love to visit with you. Here's our contact information.